He rescued the princess's life and the alien queen refused to let the human go. The alarm screamed through the lower decks of the transport vessel, and Taemin dropped his wrench. He had been working on a coolant valve when everything went wrong. Red lights flashed across every surface, and the ship's computer voice announced something about a plasma conduit failure in the upper levels. Taemin grabbed his tool bag and started running. He was just a maintenance contractor, not part of the crew, but he knew these old ships better than most people, the corridors filled with smoke as he climbed the maintenance ladders. Other workers rushed past him, going down while he went up. Someone grabbed his arm and yelled at him to evacuate, but Taemin shook them off. The damage was in the royal quarters, and if the automated systems failed, people would die. He had seen it before during his military service. When he reached the upper deck, the heat hit him like a wall. The beautiful decorative panels that lined the diplomatic section were melting, dripping like candles. Through the smoke, he could see the rescue drones hovering uselessly outside a sealed door. Their sensors were confused by the interference from the damaged conduit. Taemin pushed past them and checked the door's control panel. It was completely dead. Inside that room, someone was dying. He knew it. Tae-Min ran back to the maintenance closet and grabbed an exosuit. The old mechanical frame was designed for heavy lifting, not rescue work, but it would have to do. He also took a breather mask, though he knew it would only last 10 minutes in that toxic environment. The ship's AI kept announcing evacuations, telling everyone to reach the escape pods. Taemin ignored it. He sealed the exosuit around his body and felt the servos come to life. The metal frame amplified his strength, turning him into something stronger than a normal human. He stomped back to the sealed door and examined it closely. The locking mechanism was fused shut from the heat. There was no way to override it electronically. So Taemin did what humans do best. He forced it. The exosuit's fingers dug into the gap between the door and the frame. Taemin pulled with everything he had, and the servos whined in protest. His muscles screamed even through the mechanical assistance. Sweat poured down his face inside the helmet. The metal groaned, bent slightly, but held firm. He adjusted his grip and pulled again, this time pushing with his legs against the wall for leverage. Something snapped. The door moved an inch. Taemin roared with effort and pulled harder. The door bent further, creating a gap large enough for him to get his hands through. He wedged the exosuit's arm into the space and used it as a lever, prying the door open bit by bit. Finally, with a screech of tortured metal, the door gave way. Toxic vapor rushed out, and Taemin's suit alarms went crazy. He activated the breather mask and pushed inside. The room was filled with green mist that burned his eyes even through the protective gear. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. Taemin moved forward carefully, sweeping his arms through the smoke. His hand touched something soft. A body. Tae-Min pulled the figure toward him and almost dropped her in surprise. She was light, impossibly light, like holding a child, even though she was clearly fully grown. Her skin had a faint blue tint, and her hair seemed to shimmer even in the toxic fog. This was Princess Hana, the heir to the Valkyrie throne. Taemin had seen her face on the passenger manifest, but never expected. To meet her like this, she was not breathing. There was no time for careful medical procedures. Taemin threw the princess over his shoulder and turned back toward the door. The room shuddered as another explosion rocked the ship somewhere below. The floor tilted at an angle, and Taemin had to grab the wall to keep from falling. His breather mask's timer showed 6 minutes remaining. He made it to the doorway just as the gravity failed. Suddenly, Taemin and the princess were floating in the corridor. The emergency lighting flickered on and off, creating a nightmare of shadows and smoke. Taemin grabbed a handhold and pulled himself along the wall, keeping the princess tucked against his chest with one arm. The escape pods were too far away. He would never make it in time. But there was an emergency airlock nearby, designed for maintenance workers to do repairs on the outer hull. If he could get there, they might survive. Taemin pulled himself through the weightless corridor, hand over hand, while alarms screamed around him. His breather mask timer hit 3 minutes. The airlock was ahead, its door still functioning. Taemin yanked it open and pulled himself and the princess inside. He slapped the emergency seal button and felt the inner door lock behind them. The airlock was tiny, barely big enough for two people. Taemin checked the princess's face. Her lips were turning darker blue. She needed air immediately. Tae-Min made a decision that would either save her or kill them both. He removed his breather mask and pressed it against the princess's face. The toxic vapor was still in the airlock, burning his throat with every breath. He held the mask firmly over her nose and mouth, using one hand to activate the airlock's emergency purge system. The seconds stretched like hours. Taemin's lungs burned. His vision started to blur. He kept the mask pressed to the princess's face, watching for any sign of life. His own breaths were shallow, trying to take in as little poison as possible. The purge system hummed, slowly cycling out the contaminated air. Princess Hana's eyes fluttered open. She stared at Taemin with confusion and fear. He managed a smile, even though his head was spinning. The princess reached up weakly and tried to push the mask back toward him, but Taemin held it in place. She needed it more than he did. The airlock finally finished its cycle and clean air flooded in. Taemin gasped and immediately started coughing violently. His throat felt like he had swallowed broken glass. But he was alive, and so was the princess. They had made it. The outer door opened, and Valkyrie crew members rushed in. They pulled the princess away from Taemin, checking her vital signs and wrapping her in thermal blankets. Medical equipment appeared from nowhere, scanning her body with lights that Taemin had never seen before. Someone was speaking in the Valkyrie language, fast and urgent. Taemin slumped against the wall, still coughing. His exosuit was covered in scorch marks and chemical stains. A Valkyrie medic approached him with a scanning device, but Taemin waved it away. He was fine, probably. Everything hurt. But that was normal for humans after this kind of stress. The princess was sitting up now, talking to her attendants. She kept looking over at Taemin with an expression he could not read. Then she said something in her language, and one of the crew members came over to him. "The princess wants to know your name," the crew member said in heavily accented human language. "Taemin," he managed to croak out. "Just Taemin?" The crew member translated, and Princess Hana nodded slowly. She said something else, longer this time, and the crew member turned back to Taemin. "She says you saved her life. She says she will never forget this debt." Taemin just nodded. He did not understand the weight those words carried in Valkyrie culture. He did not know that saving a royal's life meant something profound and binding in their society. He just thought he was doing the right thing, the human thing, which was to help someone in danger. If he had known what would come next, he might have thought twice. But probably not. That was not how humans worked. He rescued the princess's life, and the alien queen refused to let the human go. 3 weeks after the rescue, Taemin was back on a space station doing maintenance work when the message arrived. It came through official channels, stamped with seals he did not recognize, but that made his supervisor's face go pale. The Valkyrie Empire formally requested his presence on their homeworld. Queen Yura herself wished to honor him for saving Princess Hana's life. Taemin wanted to refuse. He did not like attention or ceremonies. He had already given his statement to the investigators, accepted the insurance company's bonus payment, and moved on with his life. But his supervisor explained that refusing a royal invitation from the Valkyrie would be a serious diplomatic incident. The human government got involved. They saw an opportunity to improve relations with one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. So Taemin found himself on a diplomatic transport, wearing an uncomfortable formal suit, heading toward the Valkyrie homeworld. His younger sister Jiwoo called him before he left Earth's communication range. She worked as a xenobiologist and was excited about the whole thing. She made him promise to take pictures and learn everything he could about Valkyrie culture. Taemin promised, even though he just wanted the trip to be over. The Valkyrie homeworld was called Velthera, and it was nothing like Earth. As the transport descended through the atmosphere, Taemin pressed his face against the window and stared. The cities looked like they were grown rather than built, with towers that curved and spiraled like living plants. Bridges of crystal connected buildings hundreds of stories above the ground. Gardens floated in the air with no visible support. Everything glowed with soft lights and colors he had never seen before. The capital city was even more impressive. The transport landed on a platform that seemed to be made of liquid metal, though it was solid under his feet. Valkyrie officials met him, all wearing elaborate robes that changed colors as they moved. They were polite but formal, bowing in a way that made Taemin feel awkward. He tried to bow back and almost fell over. They took him to the Crystal Palace, and Taemin understood why it had that name. The entire structure was transparent, made of some material that was stronger than steel but clear as glass. He could see through the walls and floors to the gardens and rooms on other levels. It was beautiful and slightly terrifying at the same time. Minister Daehyun, a senior member of the Valkyrie Council, escorted him personally. The minister was tall like all Valkyrie, with golden eyes that seemed to look right through Taemin. He explained the ceremony in careful human language. There would be a formal presentation, Queen Yura would give him a medal, then a banquet with important officials. After that, Taemin could return home. Simple and straightforward, except nothing about the Valkyrie was ever simple. The throne room was massive, with a ceiling so high that clouds formed near the top. Hundreds of Valkyrie nobles stood in perfect rows, their robes creating a sea of shifting colors. At the far end, on a throne that seemed to be made of living light, sat Queen Yura. Even from a distance, Taemin could feel her presence. She radiated authority like heat from a fire. Princess Hannah stood beside her mother's throne, looking much healthier than the last time Taemin had seen her. She wore a gown that sparkled like starlight, and her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that probably took hours to create. When she saw Taemin, she smiled slightly. Taemin walked forward as he had been instructed, trying not to trip on the smooth floor. Every eye in the room was on him. He had faced combat situations that were less stressful than this. When he reached the throne, he bowed as Minister Daehyun had taught him. Queen Yura stood, and the room fell completely silent. She was even more impressive up close, with features that were both beautiful and somehow ancient, as if she carried the weight of thousands of years. She spoke in Valkyrie, and her voice was like music. A translator device rendered her words into human language a moment later. Taemin of Earth, you performed an act of courage that saved my daughter's life. You risked your own existence without hesitation, showing honor that transcends species. The Valkyrie Empire owes you a debt that cannot be measured in mere words or gifts. Taemin nodded, not sure what to say. The queen continued. In recognition of your heroism, I present you with the Star of Velthera, the highest honor our civilization can bestow on a foreign citizen. A Valkyrie attendant brought forward a medal on a silver cushion. The medal itself was extraordinary, appearing to contain an actual miniature star inside crystal. Queen Yura took it and personally placed it around Taemin's neck. The medal was warm against his chest. Then the queen said something that was not in the script. I also invoke the ancient tradition of the life debt covenant. The room erupted in whispers. Even Minister Daehyun looked shocked. Princess Hannah's eyes went wide. Taemin had no idea what was happening, but his instincts told him it was not good. Queen Yura raised her hand, and silence returned. She looked directly at Taemin as she spoke. You saved the life of our heir, the future of our empire? By our oldest laws, this creates a bond that cannot be broken through simple gratitude. You are now bound to the royal family until the debt is repaid. You will remain here as an honored guest and advisor, your wisdom available to guide and protect Princess Hannah. Taemin felt his stomach drop. Your Majesty, I appreciate the honor, but I have obligations back home. My family, my work, will be compensated generously, Queen Yura interrupted smoothly. Your sister Jiwoo will receive a scholarship to study at our finest Xenobiology Institute if she wishes. Your employer will be paid for your contract. You will want for nothing here. But I want to go home, Taemin said. More bluntly than he intended, the queen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. I understand this is unexpected. However, Valkyrie law is absolute in this matter. The life debt covenant has been invoked before witnesses. It cannot be undone. Taemin looked at Princess Hannah, hoping she might say something. She looked troubled but remained silent. He turned back to the queen. So I am a prisoner? You are an honored guest, Queen Yura corrected firmly. You will be treated with the highest respect. You will have access to our technology, our libraries, our culture. Many would consider this a great privilege. A privilege I did not ask for, Taemin said. The queen's face hardened slightly. You saved my daughter. In doing so, you became part of our story. There are consequences to heroism, Taemin of Earth. Sometimes the rewards are not what we expect. Minister Daehyun stepped forward quickly, probably afraid Taemin would say something that would make things worse. Let us proceed to the banquet. I am sure once Taemin understands our culture better, he will see the honor in this arrangement. Taemin wanted to argue more, but he could see it was pointless. The queen had made her decision, and everyone in this room seemed to think it was perfectly reasonable. He was trapped, caught in a web of alien laws and traditions he did not understand. The banquet was a blur. Taemin sat at a place of honor but barely tasted the exotic foods. Valkyrie nobles approached him to offer congratulations, but he could barely focus on their words. His mind was racing, trying to figure out what had just happened and how to escape it. Princess Hannah approached him near the end of the banquet. Up close, she was smaller than he expected, delicate like all Valkyrie. She spoke in careful human language. I'm sorry about this. I did not know my mother would invoke the covenant. Can she undo it? Taemin asked. Hannah hesitated. Technically, yes, but she would never do so. My mother lost my father 10 years ago. Since then, she has been overly protective. She sees you as a guardian sent by fate. In her mind, keeping you close keeps me safe. I am not a guardian. I am just an engineer who did the right thing. I know, Hannah said softly. But my mother sees the universe differently than we do. Please try to be patient. Perhaps in time she will relent. Taemin wanted to believe that, but looking across the room at Queen Yura's determined face, he had his doubts. He had saved the princess's life and somehow ended up losing his own freedom in return. The irony was not lost on him. Later, he was shown to his quarters. They were luxurious beyond anything he had ever experienced, with rooms that adjusted their temperature and lighting to his preferences. A window looked out over the glowing city. It was beautiful and felt exactly like a very comfortable prison. Tae-Min sat on the bed and activated his communication device. He needed to call Ji-woo and explain what had happened. But he discovered that his device now required authorization for outgoing calls. Every message would be monitored and approved. He was truly trapped. The Valkyrie had not locked him in chains, but the result was the same. Taemin lay back on the too-soft bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, among the stars, was Earth and freedom and his life. Here was only gilded captivity and the weight of a debt he never asked to be owed. He rescued the princess's life, and the alien queen refused to let the human go. 4 months passed, and Taemin still could not leave. He woke each morning in his luxurious rooms and felt the walls closing in on him. The palace staff treated him like royalty, bringing him whatever food he requested and offering him access to technology that most humans would never see. But none of it mattered because he was still a prisoner, even if nobody would say that word out loud. Captain Hyon from the Human Diplomatic Corps visited twice a month. He was a tired-looking man with gray hair who always brought messages from Jiwoo and news from Earth. The captain tried to negotiate Taemin's release, but Queen Yura politely refused every request. She would smile and explain the importance of tradition, the weight of the life debt covenant, and how honored Taemin should feel. Captain Hyon would leave looking frustrated and defeated. During the 3rd month, Taemin tried to escape. He studied the palace layout and found a service tunnel that led to the outer city. He made it 3 blocks before Commander Sora caught him. She was Princess Hannah's personal guard, a warrior with silver scars on her arms and eyes that missed nothing. She did not drag him back or threaten him. She just walked beside him and talked about the weather until Taemin gave up and returned to the palace on his own. The second escape attempt was more clever. Taemin befriended a supply ship pilot and hid in a cargo container. He almost made it off the planet before the ship's security scan found him. Commander Sora was waiting at the loading dock when they brought him back. She still did not punish him. She just looked at him with something like understanding and asked him to stop making her job difficult. Why do you not lock me up? Taemin asked her. I keep trying to leave, because you have done nothing wrong, Sora replied. You simply want your freedom. I would do the same in your position, then help me escape. I cannot. My duty is to the royal family. But I do not judge you for trying. At least someone understood, Taemin thought bitterly. His only real friend in the palace was Lady Yunji, a Valkyrie noble who seemed genuinely interested in human culture. She was older than most Valkyrie he met, with white streaks in her dark hair and a kind face. She started visiting his quarters to practice her human language, and they would talk for hours about the differences between their peoples. One evening, Yunji explained the situation more clearly than anyone else had. The queen lost her mate. When Hannah was still young, she said, pouring tea that changed colors as it cooled. He died protecting the royal family from assassins. Since then, Queen Yura has been terrified of losing her daughter. She hides it well, but those of us who knew her before can see the fear in her eyes. So I am what? A security blanket? Taemin asked. In a way, yes. You saved Hannah when all our technology and training failed. The queen sees that as proof that you are meant to be here, meant to protect the princess. In her mind, letting you leave would be inviting disaster. That is not fair to me. No, it is not, Yunji agreed. But the queen's word is law. Nobody can challenge her decision, not even the council. The only person who might change her mind is Hannah herself. Taemin had mixed feelings about Princess Hannah. She visited him regularly, always curious about Earth and human life. She would ask him questions about his childhood, about the foods he missed, about what rain felt like on Earth compared to Velthera. Sometimes they would sit in the palace gardens and just talk, and Taemin found himself forgetting to be angry. Hannah was kind and genuinely seemed to feel guilty about the situation, but she never stood up to her mother. She never argued for his release during court sessions. Taemin understood she was in a difficult position, but that understanding did not make his captivity easier to bear. One day, Princess Hannah brought him to the palace library. It was enormous, with millions of books and data crystals stored in rooms that seemed to fold in on themselves through some technology. Taemin could not understand. They sat in a quiet corner, and Hannah showed him historical records about the Life Debt Covenant. It has only been invoked 17 times in our entire history, she explained, her fingers dancing over the floating text, always in cases where someone saved a royal life. In ancient times, the bound person would become part of the royal household permanently. And now? Taemin asked. Now, the covenant can be dissolved if the debt is considered repaid. But only the monarch can make that determination. How do I repay saving your life? Hannah looked uncomfortable. That is the problem. There is no clear answer. Some past covenants lasted years, some lasted only months. It depends on the queen's judgment. So I could be here forever. Possibly, Hannah admitted quietly. I'm sorry, Taemin. I wish I could change this. You could try talking to your mother. I have. She does not listen. She thinks she is protecting me. Taemin wanted to be angry at Hannah, but looking at her troubled face, he could not manage it. She was as trapped by her position as he was by the covenant, just in a different way. In the 5th month, something changed. News arrived that tensions were increasing with a neighboring species called the Vekrin. They were aggressive and had been making territorial claims along the Empire's borders. Queen Yura started holding more military meetings, and the palace took on a more serious atmosphere. Taemin learned about this from Dr. Kiran, an alien scientist who had become fascinated with human biology. Kiran belonged to a third species called the Tom, who served as scholars throughout the galaxy. He had permission to study Taemin's physical abilities, and in exchange, he shared information about current events. The Vekrin are testing our defenses, Kiran explained, adjusting his multiple eyes. They believe the Valkyrie have become soft, too dependent on technology and tradition. There may be war soon? What does that have to do with me? Taemin asked. The queen may finally ask you to serve in your advisory role. She did not keep you here to sit in a garden. She expects you to protect the princess if danger comes. That night, Taemin could not sleep. He stood by his window and looked out at the glowing city. Somewhere out there, Soldiers were preparing for a possible war. And here he was, trapped in a palace, bound by laws he did not understand to protect a princess he had already saved once. The worst part was that he would probably do it. If danger came, if Hannah was threatened, he would fight to protect her. Not because of the Covenant or the Queen's command, but because it was the right thing to do. That was just how humans were built, but he wanted it to be his choice, not an obligation forced on him. Commander Sora found him by the window. She did not say anything at first, just stood beside him and looked out at the city. "You will try to escape again soon," she said finally. It was not a question. Yes, it will not work. We have learned your patterns now. I have to try. Sora nodded slowly. I understand. But be careful. There are those in the court who think you should be confined more strictly. Minister De Hyan argues that your escape attempts show disrespect. The Queen defends you for now, but that may not last forever. So I should just accept being a prisoner? I'm saying you should be smart about your rebellion. Do not give them an excuse to make things worse. After Sora left, Temmin sat on his bed and thought about everything. He was trapped between loyalty and freedom, between gratitude and resentment, between the person he was and the role he was expected to play. The Valkyrie had saved his life. After the rescue had treated him with honor and respect. But they had also taken his freedom without asking. He missed Earth. He missed his sister. He missed the simple pleasure of making his own choices about his own life. He missed being nobody special, just Taemin the engineer, fixing broken things and moving on. But that person was gone now. He had become something else, something caught between two worlds, and he did not know how to find his way back. He rescued the princess's life and the alien queen refused to let the human go. The attack came without warning on a cold morning in the 6th month. Taemin was eating breakfast when the alarm started screaming. The palace walls, usually transparent and beautiful, suddenly turned opaque and silver. Emergency lights flashed in patterns he had never seen before. Valkyrie guards rushed through the corridors in formation, their decorative armor transforming into something much more functional and threatening. Commander Sora burst into his room. Come with me now. What is happening? The Vecren? They are attacking our border stations. The Queen wants all important persons moved to secure locations. Taemin followed her through passages he had never seen before, hidden corridors behind the palace's beautiful walls. They emerged in a command center deep underground. The room was filled with floating displays showing star maps, ships, and battle reports. Queen Yura stood in the center of it all, no longer the gracious monarch but a warrior queen commanding her forces. Princess Hannah stood beside her, looking frightened but determined. The displays showed disaster. The Vecren had hit 6 border stations simultaneously, using weapons that seemed specifically designed to counter Valkyrie technology. Their ships were ugly and brutal compared to the elegant Valkyrie vessels, but they were effective. The outer defense line was already collapsing. Minister De Hyan was arguing with a military commander. This is impossible. Our intelligence showed no sign of such a massive buildup. How did they hide this many ships? They learned from us, Queen Yura said coldly. They studied our technology and found its weaknesses. This is our fault for becoming predictable. Over the next hours, Taemin watched the Valkyrie military respond to the crisis. They were organized and sophisticated, but something was wrong. Their tactics were too rigid, too dependent on complex technology. When the Vecren did something unexpected, the Valkyrie commanders seemed slow to adapt. Captain Hyan arrived with a small group of human military advisors. Apparently, Earth had sent assistance when they heard about the attack. The captain found Taemin in the command center and gripped his shoulder. Are you okay? I am fine. But this is bad, is it not? Very bad. The Vecren are hitting harder than anyone expected. Our fleet is coming, but it will take days to arrive. The situation worsened. A Vecren strike force broke through the orbital defenses and headed straight for the capital. Queen Yura ordered additional troops to defend the palace, but her face was tight with worry. She kept glancing at Princess Hannah, and Taemin understood. The Queen was not just worried about her empire. She was terrified of losing her daughter. We should evacuate the princess, Minister Daehyun urged. Take her to the secondary command bunker in the mountains. No, Hana said firmly. I will not abandon the palace while our people are fighting. Hana, please, Queen Yura started. Mother, I am the heir. I cannot hide while others die defending me. The argument was interrupted by urgent reports. The Vecran strike force was landing outside the city. Ground troops were advancing toward the palace. The Velkari military prepared to meet them, but intelligence suggested the Vecran had a secondary objective: infiltrate the palace and capture or kill the royal family. Taemin felt something shift inside him. For months, he had been angry about his captivity, resentful of the Covenant and the Queen's control. But watching Princess Hana stand brave, while knowing she was a target, seeing Queen Yura try to balance her duty with her fear, he realized something. These people were not his enemies. They were just people, flawed and scared like everyone else. The first explosion hit the palace's outer wall 3 hours later. Velkari guards rushed to defensive positions, and the command center prepared for possible evacuation. Then the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in after a moment, but something was wrong. The displays showed Vecran soldiers inside the palace. Somehow they had breached the defenses without triggering the normal alarms. Commander Sora immediately understood. They have our security codes. Someone gave them access. Traitors? Queen Yura looked shocked. Oh, very good intelligence. Either way, we have hostiles in the palace. The command center went into lockdown. Heavy blast doors sealed them inside, but Taemin knew those doors would not hold forever. He looked around at the Velkari guards preparing their weapons. They were well-trained and equipped with advanced technology. But something in their formation bothered him. You are setting up to defend this room like a fortress, he said to Commander Sor. Double quotes. Yes, standard defensive protocol. That will not work against the Vecran. They will know you are doing this. What do you suggest? Taemin thought about his military training, about the brutal lessons learned in human conflicts where technology failed and survival meant being meaner and smarter than the enemy. Let me help. I know tactics they will not expect. Sora looked at Queen Yura, who hesitated only a moment before nodding. Do it. Taemin gathered a mixed group of Velkari guards and the human military advisors. Among the humans was Sergeant Kong, a tough woman with combat experience. Together they planned something the Velkari had never considered: aggressive counter-ambush, using dirty tricks and psychological warfare when the Vecran forces reached the command center level. They expected to find defenders waiting behind the blast doors. Instead, they found empty corridors. Then the ambush hit from behind. Taemin's group had circled around using maintenance tunnels. They struck fast and brutal, using improvised explosives and close-quarters combat. The Vecran were shocked by the aggression. Velkari soldiers did not fight like this, did not use such crude and violent tactics, but humans did. And the Velkari guards following Taemin's lead learned quickly the battle through the palace was vicious. Taemin found himself falling back on instincts from his military days, doing things he thought he had left behind. He shot Vecran soldiers without hesitation. He set traps that were designed to maim rather than kill cleanly, slowing down the enemy advance. He used fear as a weapon, making the Vecran forces cautious and uncertain. Sergeant Kong fought beside him, covering his back. You are good at this, she said during a brief pause. I hate that I am good at this. Taemin replied. The turning point came when Taemin realized the Vecran were specifically hunting for princes. Hana. They had intelligence about the palace layout and were moving systematically toward the command center. But they were following predictable patterns. Expecting the Velkari to defend in predictable ways, Taemin changed the plan. Instead of defending Hana where she was, he moved her. With Commander Sora's help, they relocated the princes through the same maintenance tunnels he had used during his escape attempts. The Vecran strike team breached the command center only to find it empty of their primary target. The Vecran commander was furious. Taemin could hear it over the captured communications devices. They had expected an easy mission, relying on stolen intelligence and Velkari predictability. Nobody had warned them about the human element, The final confrontation happened in the palace gardens. A Vecran assassination team cornered Princess Hana as she was being moved to a secure transport. They had superior numbers and weapons. Commander Sora was wounded. The other guards were down. Tay-Min arrived with Sergeant Kong and 2 Valkyrie soldiers. The odds were bad, but they had surprise. Taemin did not hesitate. He charged directly at the Vecran leader, using an improvised shield to deflect energy weapon fire. It was reckless and aggressive, the kind of tactic no Valkyrie would use because it relied on accepting pain and damage to get close enough to strike. But Taemin was human. Humans were good at accepting pain when necessary. He crashed into the Vecran leader, both of them going down hard. The improvised shield shattered, and Taemin's arm felt like it was on fire from the energy burns. But he was close now, too close for ranged weapons. He grabbed the Vecran's weapon arm and twisted until something broke. The other Vecran soldiers tried to help their leader, but Sergeant Kang and the Valkyrie guards cut them down. It was brutal and fast. When it was over, Taemin sat on the ground, his whole body shaking from adrenaline, and watched medics rush to help Princess Hana. She was alive. Hurt but alive. Queen Yura arrived moments later and ran to her daughter with a cry that was very human in its emotion. Later, as dawn broke over the city, the Vecran forces retreated. Human naval ships had arrived in orbit, bringing advanced weapons the Vecran had not expected. The invasion was over. The palace was secure. Tay-Min sat in the medical bay, getting his burns treated. Queen Yura found him there. She looked exhausted, her perfect appearance finally showing cracks. "You saved my daughter again," she said quietly. "I was here. I did what needed to be done. You did more than that. You showed us how to fight when our technology failed. You adapted when we were rigid. You were brutal when we needed brutality." She paused. "Thank you." Taemin just nodded. He was too tired to be angry anymore. He rescued the princess's life, and the alien queen refused to let the human go. The weeks after the invasion were strange. The palace slowly repaired itself using Valkyrie technology that seemed almost magical. Workers removed damaged sections, and new crystal walls grew in their place. The gardens where Taemin had fought were replanted with flowers that bloomed in colors he still had no names for. It was as if the violence had never happened, but people remembered. Valkyrie citizens stopped Taemin in the streets to thank him. The military commanders who had initially dismissed him now sought his advice. Minister Daehyun, who had always been suspicious of humans, bowed respectfully when they met. Taemin had proven himself in the most brutal way possible. He did not feel like celebrating. His burns had healed, but he kept seeing the faces of the Vecran soldiers he had killed. He kept remembering the moment when he had thrown himself into violence without hesitation, becoming someone he thought he had left behind. At night, he would wake up from dreams of smoke and screaming. Princess Hana visited often. She had been shaken by the attack, but was recovering. They would sit in the repaired gardens and talk about lighter things, trying to forget the darkness. But sometimes Hana would look at him with an expression he could not read. Something between gratitude and sadness. "You hate being here?" she said one afternoon. Tay-Min considered lying but decided against it. "Yes, even after everything? Even after we fought together? Fighting together does not make this cage any less of a cage. I'm glad you are safe, Hana. I would protect you again if I had to. But that does not mean I want to stay." Hana nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm going to talk to my mother again. She will not listen." "Maybe, but I have to try." 3 days later, everything changed. A human diplomatic vessel arrived in orbit, and Zhiwu was on board. Taemin's sister had demanded to meet with Queen Yura personally, refusing to be turned away by protocol or diplomatic channels. Captain Hyen had warned that it might cause an incident, but Jiwoo did not care. She was done being patient. The meeting happened in the throne room. Taemin was not supposed to be there, but Commander Sora quietly brought him to a side entrance where he could watch. The room was filled with Valkyrie nobles and council members, all curious about the human woman who had demanded an audience with their queen. Guo entered wearing simple earth clothing, looking tiny compared to the tall Valkyrie around her. but she walked with her head high and her eyes fierce. She stopped before Queen Yura's throne and did not bow. "I am Vuwu Taemin's sister," she said in clear Valkyrie language that she must have learned just for this moment. "I have come to take my brother home." The room went silent. Queen Yura looked surprised by the directness. "Your brother is an honored guest? He is being treated well." "He is a prisoner," Iwu said flatly. "You can call it whatever you want, but the truth is he cannot leave. You are keeping him here against his will. I invoked a life-debt covenant. It is our law. It is your excuse." Iwu's voice was shaking but steady. "You are using gratitude as chains. My brother saved your daughter because he is a good person, because it was the right thing to do. And you repay him by taking his freedom? How is that honorable?" Minister Daehyun stepped forward. "You dare question our traditions. I question any tradition that steals someone's life." Jiwoo interrupted. "You are no better than the Vecran who attacked you. At least they were honest about being enemies." The comparison to the Vecran caused gasps throughout the room. Commander Sora tensed, ready to intervene if things got violent. But Queen Yura raised her hand for silence. She studied Jiwoo with those ancient eyes. "You love your brother very much. More than you can understand," Jiwoo said. "He is all the family I have. And you took him from me. I kept him safe. You kept him trapped." They stared at each other, human and alien, both strong-willed and neither willing to back down. Then Princess Hannah stood from her place beside the throne. "Mother, we need to talk." Queen Yura looked at her daughter in surprise. Hannah walked to the center of the room, positioning herself between Jiwoo and the throne. "I have stayed silent for too long," Hannah said. "I felt guilty about what happened to Taemin, but I did not challenge you because I did not want to be disrespectful. But Jiwoo is right. We are not honoring Taemin. We are imprisoning him." "Hannah," Queen Yura started. "No, Mother. Let me speak." Hannah's voice was stronger than Taemin had ever heard it. "You invoked a life-debt covenant because you were afraid. You saw Taemin save my life and you thought keeping him close would keep me safe? But that is not how guardianship works. You cannot force someone to care. You cannot command protection. It has to be given freely." The Queen's face was hard to read. "I was protecting you? You were protecting yourself from fear," Hannah said gently. "I understand. You lost father, and that pain never left you. But keeping Taemin prisoner will not prevent future tragedies. It will only create resentment." "He saved you during the invasion," Queen Yura argued. "That proves he belongs here. He fought for me because he is a good person, not because of the covenant." "But Mother, did you see his face afterward? Did you see the pain in his eyes? We are destroying him slowly by keeping him here." Taemin felt his throat tighten. He had not realized Hannah understood so much. Queen Yura sat back in her throne, looking older than usual. The room waited in complete silence. Finally, she spoke. "What would you have me do?" "Release him," Hannah said. "Dissolve the covenant. Let him choose his own path. And if he leaves and never returns? If danger comes again and he is not here, then we face it as we always have, with courage and wisdom. We cannot build our safety on someone else's captivity." The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked past her daughter to where Jiwoo stood. "You would take him away from here? Back to Earth?" "In a heartbeat," Jiwoo said. "And you, Taemin." The Queen's voice carried through the room. "I know you are listening. Come forward." Taemin emerged from the side entrance, his heart pounding. He walked to stand beside Jiwoo and felt her hand grip his arm. Queen Yura looked at him with an expression that might have been sadness. "Tell me honestly, if I release you, will you hate the Valkyrie?" Taemin considered the question carefully. "No, I will remember the people I met here. Hannah's kindness, Commander Sora's understanding, Lady Yunji's friendship. But I will also remember being trapped. Both things can be true. And if I ask you to stay as a liaison between our peoples, not as a prisoner, but as a free person who can leave whenever he wishes, then I would think about it. Maybe I would accept. Maybe not." but it would be my choice. Queen Yura stood from her throne. The room held its breath. I hereby dissolve the life debt covenant. Taemin of Earth, you are free to leave. The debt is considered repaid through your actions during the invasion. You owe us nothing more. The words felt unreal. Taemin waited for a condition, a trick, but none came. Jiwoo squeezed his arm tighter. However, the queen continued, I offer you this. If you ever choose to return, you will be welcome. Not as an advisor bound by covenant, but as a friend of the royal family. The offer of a liaison position remains open, with full freedom to accept or decline. Why? Taemin asked. Because my daughter is wiser than I am, Queen Yura said quietly. She understands that trust cannot be commanded. It must be earned. So I give you your freedom, and I hope that someday you might choose to return of your own will. Taemin looked at Princess Hannah. She was smiling, though tears ran down her face. Thank you, he said to the queen. Then to Hannah, thank you. The next day, Taemin and Jiwoo boarded the transport ship. His belongings fit in a single bag. Princess Hannah came to see him off, along with Commander Sora, Lady Yunji, and several others he had come to know. Will you come back? Hannah asked. I do not know, Taemin answered honestly. I need time to figure out who I am when I am not trapped. I understand, but I hope you do. Not because we need you, but because I think you might need us too someday. She was probably right. Taemin had changed during his time on Velthora. He could not go back to being the simple engineer who just wanted to fix things and move on. He had become something more complicated. The transport lifted off, and Taemin watched through the window as the Crystal Palace grew smaller. Jiwoo sat beside him, holding his hand and crying quietly with relief. Earth was days away, but for the first time in months, Taemin felt like he could breathe. 5 months passed. Taemin tried to return to his old life, but it did not fit anymore. Everything felt small and meaningless after the things he had seen and done. He worked his maintenance contracts but felt empty. Jiwoo worried about him but did not push. Then a message arrived from Princess Hannah. She told him about reforms she was pushing in Valkyrie society, making their laws less rigid and more compassionate. She told him about the alliance growing between the Valkyrie and humanity. She told him she missed their conversations. Tae-min stared at the message for a long time. Then he made his choice. He accepted the liaison position. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He would split his time between Earth and Velthora, belonging fully to neither place but finding a home in both. He would help build bridges between species, using his unique understanding of both worlds. When he arrived back at the Crystal Palace,